Well, we got a Cruz fundraiser, Mica Mosbacher with us, Jeb Bush supporter, Morgan Ortegas, and, of course, my buddy Pat Caddell. All right, so, Mica, to you first. You stayed with Senator Cruz, never left him, didn't think that he was in trouble. You said that ultimately the people of this fine state would stick with him, but particularly those evangelical voters. It appears early on that you were right, still close. But if he pulls this out, what do you think that means?
Well, first of all, I'd want to count my chickens before they hatch.
Absolutely.
But we're pretty excited because Cruz has been itching for the opportunity to show that he is electable, even though he's not a celebrity. And I think what he's showing tonight is that his base is willing to show out for him. I was out of the Des Moines High School tonight at a caucus. It was standing room only. The evangelicals did come out and support him. The Cruz campaign has worked very hard. We have over 12,000 volunteers who have been here for almost a year. What you're going to see as a result, if he does indeed win Iowa, is that Trump is not bulletproof. He is now vulnerable to Cruz's ammunition.
Yeah, I mean, he's rarely been trailing in polls, and this would be the first official one. It's not a poll that he would lose. But for Marco Rubio, the attention goes back on him. By the way, I mentioned just a second ago that Martin O'Malley was taking himself out of the presidential race, giving a dismal performance today. True enough, in about, I think, 20 minutes, he's going to address supporters where he will formally announce just that he is quitting the race. Now to Jeb Bush supporter Morgan Ortegas. Your guy not having a good night right now. Morgan's still early, but he's certainly not going to do substantially better or get anywhere near the top three. You worried?
I don't think he was trying to get near the top three, but I agree with Mica. I think the real winner, the giant slayer tonight, looks like it's going to be Cruz. His team has been confident for a long time. I was talking to some of their pollsters this morning. What's interesting to me is that everyone predicted massive turnout for the Iowa caucuses, and they said it would be, the conventional wisdom was the turnout would be because of Trump. And actually, it turns out the turnout is for Trump, Cruz, Rubio. So I
know, that's an excellent point. We always think the consensus was heavy turnout benefits Donald Trump, and that's not the case.
Well, and I think what happened, what he did do, what we can certainly give him credit for, is that Republican voters are paying attention to this race. They're watching the debates. Clearly a big miss that he didn't come to the Fox News debate. So they're watching the debates.
Do you think that was a part of it? It's easy to handicap after the fact.
Because he looks like a big baby.
Really?
I think so.
Yes, he had more to lose than to gain, though. He was the front runner, so why take a chance?
Patrick, if these numbers hold as they are for some of the lesser players, we'll look at Chris Christie, Gilmore, some of the others, even Jeb Bush, I mean, they've got to hope to strike lightning in New Hampshire. Right?
If they don't, I think the real question right now with Cruz is showing, and Trump, and those things we're not sure about because of what's out.
Right.
There's a lot of eastern Iowa out in big cities. Who
would that benefit?
Probably Trump and Rubio a little bit. This thing could be a hairline. It's just hard to tell because we don't have the exact results.
You know that for sure that's where we're not getting it?
Yeah, well, that's what Carl was saying, and he watches counties like a hawk.
Right.
He's got any one time you want to know what's in and out of Ask Road, he gets it. But here's the point. Cruz is outperforming what the polls were saying.
Yeah.
He was dropping. He's not. This changes that dynamic enormously. But what also counts is, what is this going to do to some of these people who are hanging in there? They have no place to go.
And that's what they've been waiting for, clearing out.
Clearing out begins to bring this race into focus, and we'll see how much of that in New Hampshire.
But the punditry class, which I guess I'm a part of now, keeps talking about the passion for Trump and the people coming out for Trump. I'm seeing just as much passion against Trump in the Republican Party tonight as I'm seeing for him. This is a big night for Cruz and Rubio.
It's a game changer, I think, and it gives Cruz an opportunity to have the wind at his back as he goes into New Hampshire.
You're a big backer of Senator Cruz, and he had to absorb a lot of body blows at that debate since he had that center podium when Donald Trump opted out. How differently do you think this night would be looking at Donald Trump stayed for that debate? He wasn't, that is, presumably such a target for these attacks. Would he have done better, worse? What do you think?
Well, you know, it's hindsight's 20/20.
Absolutely.
But poor Cruz, he did have a big bullseye on his back, and he was on the defensive the whole time, and he had a shaky start. I have to agree.
Well, look, his organization clearly is delivering.
Exactly.
Because it's a crucial factor holding him up. I mean, helping him where he is tonight. He really has a huge organization here, and it's paying off. It's pulling that up, and you can see that because at least what's being reported as the evangelical turnout. which is much more. It's even higher than it was in 12.
And by the way, that evangelical turnout in all of these, both urban areas and rural areas, is it evenly dispersed? You always think of evangelical voters in more rural areas, or is that hard to say?
My parents are very big evangelicals, and they would not hold their nose and vote for Trump. I mean, I think
is that right?
There's no way. No, they get. I think they think I have more influence than I have.
A lot of them are voting for Trump, and let me say this. And also for Rubio, but Trump is running second, at least that's what we're told. But here's the point.
All right.
We have a lot of voters who are not voting normally. They are unhappy, they're outraged, and we will get to this as night goes on. In both primaries, those who are more outside are doing the best.
I'd like to see Trump get in third tonight, just because I think his head might spin off and explode, and that would make me
see, you're just a hater. You're just a hater. All right.
Yeah.
We don't know what that's going to be, but it is a tight race, and Marco Rubio keeps adding to his total here and getting closer to second place here. So whether that would be Cruz or Trump that falls in that process, it's hard to say, but it is tight. To my colleague's point here, with about 3/4 of the vote in. To Ed Henry on some worries in Camp Clinton. Ed, what do you got?
Good to see you, Neil. Two bits of breaking news right now. Number one, Martin O'Malley, the former Maryland governor, has we've just confirmed with his aides. He hasn't announced it, but he's suspending his campaign. He did not reach viability in very many, if any, of the caucus sites, at least 15%. So his supporters are flocking either to Clinton or Sanders. Martin O'Malley out. He's announcing that in under 20 minutes here at a restaurant in Des Moines. Second point, right now I'm looking at my phone because the Iowa Democratic Caucus site is saying that Hillary Clinton is down to 50.4%. Sanders at his highest number of the night, 49%. So this is a very tight race. It's still tightening, and here's why the Clinton camp is nervous at this hour. I'm being told by Democratic officials, the counties that are still out, the caucuses that are still out, are more likely, not definitely, but more likely to be the ones with a lot of new voters. Who are the new voters going with? Bernie Sanders. They're young people, the college campuses, all of that. So the bottom line is this is already a close race, and as more numbers come in later in the night, they're not definitely, but more likely to be Sanders voters. So there's very tight gap. What I said was 50.4% to 49%, just a 1.4% difference. It might get even tighter, or you might even see Sanders edge ahead. They've just opened the doors a few moments ago here at Drake University. This is where Hillary Clinton is planning to give a speech tonight. You can see a crowd building behind me. A very small room, but a crowd developing. Interesting. Is she going to give a victory speech, or is she going to have to say, on to New Hampshire, try to launch a comeback? That's what happened when Barack Obama and John Edwards beat her here in Iowa in 2008. But let's remember, she came storming back in New Hampshire. Neil?
She did indeed. She did indeed. All right, thank you, buddy. We'll go back to him as conditions warrant it. And again, as he confirmed, and we have been reporting here, Martin O'Malley is quitting the presidential race, and this night had a lot to do with it. He had hoped that he could do better. He did not. And it was a candidacy that never really jibed, and his headquarters pretty much spells it out. This kind of sums it all up. If you're getting it done, then a lot of people show up. If not, well, this is kind of like my whole dating career. It's kind of
I don't feel that bad.
Commentary on what's going on. But for Martin O'Malley, well, take the posters with you on your way out. 15 minutes or so.
You know,
it's sad.
It's sad. You know what?
It is what it is.
For whatever it's worth, he really worked hard. He campaigned hard.
Right.
This has really got to be just disappointing. But you got to give the guy credit. He really went out there and tried, and we don't give enough credit to all the candidates who go out and put themselves on the line.
Absolutely, but you got to rack up the votes. You got to rack up the votes.
That helps.
Yeah. That does help. We have Mica Mosbacher here, who's a big Cruz backer. We have Morgan Ortegas, who's a big Bush backer. Pat Cadell, who backs nobody. He just criticizes everybody.
My job.
Kidding.
My job.
That is your job. All right, Morgan, for Jeb Bush, as I look at these numbers, I don't know what he was expecting, but going into New Hampshire, he's got to do better, doesn't he? He just has to do better.
Clearly. I think he's in New Hampshire tonight. Christie's in New Hampshire tonight. Kasich is in New Hampshire tonight. I think the good news is that in the governor's lane, he's pulling ahead here. This is clearly the night for Cruz.
That was, he and Christie were fighting over who's going to be the best performing governor.
Yeah,
right?
This is the night for Cruz and Rubio, clearly. I mean, Rubio's a story, sure, but Cruz is the giant slayer here tonight. Going in New Hampshire, you'd have to be, out of it, not to think that you have to, all of the candidates have to have a good showing. I think we're going to see a few people drop out tonight. And then for Kasich and Christie, it's really all or nothing in New Hampshire. Bush at least has a national infrastructure, which Kasich and Christie don't have. So.
And I'm thinking of Rubio and the support of Tim Scott in South Carolina. That's a crucial state in February 20th.
I mean, South Carolina is. It depends on how much Tim Scott actually does. Lindsey Graham is the one with the incredible network in South Carolina.
And he's supporting Bush.
He's working it aggressively. You know, if Tim, I don't know that Tim Scott.
You really hang out everything for Bush.
South Carolina, and
I'm a loyal soldier.
Tim Scott is a lot more popular than Lindsey Graham by far among Republicans.
Well, we'll see.
She doesn't give up the fight. She's loyal to her friends.
You know,
unlike you.
The facts, girl.
Unlike you.
We'll see.
You just turn on people on a dime. You know. All right, Mica. Now, for your guy going into New Hampshire, does this change the math for him? With high expectations? Now, one thing I found interesting in 2008 is after Barack Obama surprised a lot of people, won Iowa. I think there were 11 or 12 polls that he was favored to win New Hampshire. He loses New Hampshire.
Right.
So what do you make of the pressure that's on your guy for New Hampshire?
Well, again, we want to manage expectations. We're looking for win, place, or show. The important state for us is South Carolina. And again, we have a very good ground game. And we have plenty of money to last. It's a national campaign.
Yeah, because a lot of Iowa winners, they didn't have that wherewithal to keep going, right?
We still have the most cash of any Republican candidate on hand. I mean, not in terms of PACs, but in terms of actual dollar donations.
Right.
So, and that's the key
How's
factor.
Jeb Bush doing? Does he still have money in?
And, they reported today that he's only taking primary cash. He has over $several million cash on hand. Rubio, and for primary cash, has around the same thing. You know, one of the things I'm hearing, since you're a resident of South Carolina, is that the Bush family is still quite well liked there, and they're planning on campaigning there, I believe, potentially for Jeb. Do you think that will affect South Carolina?
Well, it'll have an impact. Look, South Carolina, I've always predicted, is going to be a slaughter ground. This is going to be where it all comes.
Yeah.
It normally is, but this, yes. First of all, a lot of the Republican Party is established.
All right, by the way, God, I want to interrupt you. We can now officially project that Ted Cruz has won the Iowa caucuses and that Donald Trump will come in second and Rubio, just calm down, and Rubio will be a close third, Carson a distant fourth, Rand Paul a distant fifth. But the way I see it right now, with 99% in, you could make a case that it is possible, seeing as they're separated by not even, 300 votes, Rubio and Trump could switch positions.
This is what happened 4 years ago with Santorum and Romney. So
it is
totally possible.
Okay. What do you think, Patrick?
No, I don't. I think the 2000, that margin at 99 is a little bit much.
But look at this.
But look
this
at the turnout. It's 2,000.
I know, but look at this margin. It's easily doable.
Well, you'd have to win almost everything out to do that.
Really?
But I think that it'll be it could even get closer. I don't think it'll do enough.
Okay. This is, but look at that. Can we get a juxtaposition here? Boy, it is nice to win. It is not nice to not. This is Cruz headquarters here in Iowa. I want to give you kind of a different read when it doesn't go as well. On the other side of the ledger, the other side of the political party line, Martin O'Malley, his headquarters here versus the Cruz headquarters you're looking at. If we still have that, those are O'Malley's headquarters.
I feel bad.
It is. It is a cruel world. It is a very, very cruel world. And we're about 5 minutes away. I don't even know if they unplugged the microphones or anything, because Martin O'Malley has to talk to people.
Somewhere.
He's got to talk to people somewhere, and he might just Skype that out for all we know. But he is formally quitting the race, and that leaves Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton to duke it out. And their race, if we could take a quick look at what's going on in their race on the Democratic side. Now, you're looking at the Republican side, where we could say Ted Cruz has indeed won. But in the Democratic side, we're still saying it's too close to call. Now, this looks confusing. You see these lower numbers, you say, Neil, what's the deal? In the Democratic side, they count delegates, and there are about 1,471 delegates, and it's represented as a proportion of the delegates out there. So that's why the numbers are very low. That's why Martin O'Malley, with those 7 delegates, is saying, that's it, I'm done. I'm hanging it up. And Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are fighting it out. One thing you mentioned, Patrick, which I thought was dead on, is that vote, close as it is, and favoring Hillary Clinton might not exactly mirror what's going on in the popular vote.
No, and that's critical, too. And we know they can report that. And I'm going to find out when we get a break whether or not we're going to that's being reported. Because for the people of America, they want to know who really won. Delegates are one thing, votes are another, as we've proved tonight.
Do you think there's much momentum you get out of this state? If you're Ted Cruz, what do you do with this win? Other Iowa winners, as you pointed out, haven't been able to parlay that into much.
Well, I think it will help him in New Hampshire. Everyone thought he was gone. The real test about New Hampshire is Trump. He was so far ahead. He has been so far ahead in New Hampshire. It is friendly ground to him. And how he performs tonight when he speaks, this is a big moment, because it will have a big impact in New Hampshire on what happens to his vote And does New Hampshire do what it's done before, say, all right, Iowa, you did your thing, but we're New Hampshire and we're going to do something different. But that Rubio total, too, you may have those three players in New Hampshire.
All right, by the way, on a night where they're the kingmakers and those who pack it up, signs that Mike Huckabee is suspending his campaign following Martin O'Malley, all but hanging it up. But a winner of these caucuses 8 years ago, when John McCain ultimately went on to win the nomination. Again, that was a surprise to many at the time. Mike Huckabee could not parlay either the money or influence or stature in the Republican Party establishment to build beyond that, and seems to be hanging up his gloves now after not doing well in the state with evangelical support. He probably had hoped to do much better, and so he too hanging up the gloves tonight, the same night that Martin O'Malley is giving it a rest. So we're actually seeing this weeding out
starting
real time tonight. Yeah.
Huckabee will be interesting to me because he has not gotten along with Ted Cruz at all, and that's another part of the evangelical vote that we've seen divided tonight. So where does he go?
Point.
I mean, he's a governor, and I know that he's friendly with Bush. Does he go there? Or does he try to go with Marco?
I remember he showed up at his Trump event. Remember the night of the debate? He went to the Trump event.
He admitted that he got a lot of flack from his supporters from showing that. But I think that what we've shown tonight is that the evangelical vote is not monolithic. I don't see Huckabee going to Cruz because the animosity, the hate is real.
Is it really that bad?
The hate is real.
Well, let me just ask this question. Let me interrupt. I'm not spinning. I don't have to do this. Let me just say this. Huckabee made clear today that his attack on the money in politics, on Democrats and Republicans, Wall Street money, and he specifically mentioned both of your candidates. Yes. I'm not sure that he won't end up with Trump. What I am surprised by is that Huckabee, with this kind of evangelical turnout, didn't do better. And neither did, more importantly, neither did Carson, who didn't move.
About 9%.
And with a much bigger evangelical turnout than was projected for him at 10. So.
Carson made a bizarre statement tonight. He said that he's going home to Florida.
It's not the first
well, he disavowed that. There was a tweet that was out that he was packing up or suspending something to that effect. He said, no, I'm just leaving, go back to Florida, getting some clothes.
But that's still bizarre. I mean, everybody's going to New Hampshire right away. Anyway,
well,
we'll
you got to get your clothes. How big a bag do you pack?
A very big,
really?
Multiple suitcases.
Yeah. I
it takes a lot to look like
because
that.
I save a lot on baggage fees.
It's an effort.
I just wanted to leave you with that image. I don't like baggage fees. I mean, Mica, you're hearing this, and you know the pressure is going to really be on your guy right now. If he didn't like that center pole position in the debate. But I do think that one thing that's going to come through loud and clear is how different this night might have been for Donald Trump, and this isn't just because I work at Fox, had he participated in that debate. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think he should have participated because it looks like he cares about the people of Iowa and what they have to say. I think it was calculated, though. I said earlier, I think he was concerned he had more to lose than to gain by participating. Yeah. And it had really nothing to do with Megyn Kelly.
All right, well, we know that a lot of people are going to do second guessing. I think the headline tomorrow morning will be Donald Trump doesn't win. I mean, that's something that he's not used to.
And by the way, how he handles that tonight is now critical.
Exactly.
How I think Howard Dean could have won New Hampshire after the finishing badly, but he had a crazy moment. People are wondering, is Donald Trump, can he be humble tonight?
Is he going to congratulate?
Yeah, and that becomes important. And also remember, what is proving is his negatives, which have been rising in the Republican Party at 47. Remember, we talked earlier today about how much his vote, he's overperforming. His favorable vote, he only had a topping at 50% of favorability compared to the others, but he was maximizing that.
Right.
He's not maximizing it tonight.
No, he's not. All right, we have a lot more that could happen already. We have two casualties this evening. Martin O'Malley quitting on the Democratic side. Mike Huckabee suspending on the Republican side. There could be more before this evening is out as we see this 1, 2, 3 Cruz, Trump, Rubio finish out again for Ted Cruz, a huge comeback from what looked like certain defeat. Not anymore. He's in the driver's seat. Donald Trump has some splaining to do, and he will shortly. More after this. It's anyone's guess what happens right now. We're expecting to hear from Ted Cruz. We got a big Cruz fundraiser with us. Mica Mosbacher is back. And I got to tell you, Mica, I'm looking at those numbers. for on the Democratic side, where they're just about as close to even as you could be. Your candidate now, he can't be sure if he were the nominee who he'd be facing, right?
No.
Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders?
No, it's too close to tell. And I would take Hillary over Bernie, I think, because I think Bernie is also viewed as the outsider in the Democratic Party. And it seems to be a year for outsiders and insurgents.
Morgan, I'll take us here as well. Morgan, you know, you're a big Jeb Bush backer. He didn't put up great numbers tonight. He might in New Hampshire. But the pressure's going to be on all these guys who were in the single digits to put up or shut up, and soon, right?
Well, let me just say what I love optically about tonight. You have two 70-year-old socialists, and you have two Cubans and an African-American and Trump in the top four of the Republican Party. 51% of Iowa caucus goers on the Republican side voted for Cubans.
Who else is a socialist?
Well, I'm just joking. I'm calling Hillary the socialist. But,
yeah, that's a little mean. Right?
Well, I know. We're Fox, but...
Okay.
So, I am on Fox, right? Anyway, but seriously, I mean, look, 51% of Iowa caucus voters tonight voted for two Cubans. I think that we have, on the Republican side, I'm really proud of our top four.
It's a diverse field. All right, meantime, we are waiting to hear from Ted Cruz. Pat Caddell with me here, though. If you add up, though, on the Republican side, the 28% for Ted Cruz, the 24% for Donald Trump, two kind of outside-the-box candidates.
Right.
You know, that's about half the vote.
That's half.
Right there.
Add Ben Carson's 9. And that gets you over 60%.
So that outside sentiment is still there.
And it's in both parties.
Yeah.
And this is the story of this year. And let me just say this about Rubio's speech. Rubio has, as an establishment candidate, hasn't been so identified so much. I've been waiting for him, whether he's, and that speech he gave tonight had great, powerful themes. But if he begins to take on, I've got problems with Washington, I'm an outsider somewhat, that will help him. Otherwise, we're going to have a battle right down here between, you know, the outsiders and the insider. So it'll be interesting.
You know,
but
Mica,
right now, both states are powerfully for insurgents.
It is interesting. I mean, you think about it. Bill Clinton survived in 1992 as the comeback kid, even losing, coming in second place in New Hampshire. But the storyline was later that he could take a beating and keep on ticking. And he was like the Energizer Bunny. He did. Much could be said of Ted Cruz, who was really getting pelted left and right. And he managed to survive in Iowa. It's got to be a pretty impressive wind at his back right now.
Well, it is a prevailing wind, but he needs to double down because Trump is going to come back swinging. He doesn't like to lose, and I think it's
But do you think the whole citizen, the natural-born citizen thing has been put to rest, or no?
Well, it's still a question for the courts, but I think it will turn in.
Do you really? Is it a question for the court? Do you think it'll still be on people's minds?
Clearly not tonight. Not in Iowa, it's not.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think that issue. Look, I think Trump made a mistake going so negative. He had the powerful message of "I am your voice," and he gave it up to keep hammering people. He doesn't seem to understand.
It's really all about just putting a layer of doubt in there, right?
Yeah,
Just have people think,
he keeps pounding it. But look at this turnout. Just the three people on top.
Right.
Just looking at Cruz, Trump, and Rubio alone, they already exceed, just those three candidates, the turnout for the whole top. They top what the turnout was entirely in 12 and 08.
You know, Morgan, I think you read something very powerful, that if you look at this lineup of the top performers of the Republicans, you know, you've got a pretty diverse crowd there. And that is the one thing that you really can't say about the other side.
It's a very diverse crowd, and I think also, and I mentioned this earlier, what you're seeing tonight is it is record turnout and it is record passion, but it's not what the conventional wisdom said that it would all be for Trump. Clearly, there's a lot of passion tonight for Cruz and Rubio. You saw National Review, you saw the Weekly Standard, you saw sort of what I call the conservative establishment come out against Trump, and those guys get a lot of credit. It worked.
It did work. By the way, we're hearing from our Ed Henry. The Democratic officials are apparently sharing with him that there is no automatic recount in a state even as close as what's going on in Iowa right now in this Democratic caucus. It's a party-run system. Apparently it's not a state-run system. So just in case this stays within the 0.2% range or closer, No recount. What do you make of that, Patrick?
Well, I think it's, can I be frank? I just think it's the same thing we've seen before, that the establishment of the Democratic Party nationally and in Iowa, they're all in the tank for Hillary. Would
they maintain the position if she loses?
You watch how quickly they would change it if she loses. I'm telling you, when they say there's no provision, they'll find.
You strike me as a hater.
I'm not a hater. I'm a realist, because this is a stacked deck against Bernie Sanders, and
he unstacked it.
I think he's unstacked it tonight. And it looks like to me, with what's in and still out, that I still think vote-wise he's nudging her.
Yeah, by the way, we should say, I'm sorry, Morgana, we'll finish that point, but it is different. I know a lot of you email and wonder, why are we getting these low numbers for the Democrats versus the Republicans? The Republicans are expressed in just raw vote. The number of people who go to a caucus site, express their preference, either slip a paper, give it to the precinct captain or who's ever running that gets handed into Microsoft, gets tallied. So these are individual votes you're seeing here. Now, with the case of the Democrats, it's really delegate counts, 1,400 plus delegates that will ultimately make their way to the state convention, and that's a portion, in this case, almost evenly. But as Patrick pointed out, as he always astutely does, this is not quite reflecting a slightly more disproportionate edge in the popular vote in Bernie Sanders' favor. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's way, way out of whack, but enough that it doesn't reflect what's going on in the popular vote. If you awarded this just on the popular vote breakdown, we're told that Bernie Sanders would have a much more comfortable delegate lead. He does not in this 50-50 breakdown. But Morgan, again, no recount is planned for the time being.
I think if the numbers stay the way that they are, it doesn't matter if Hillary wins by a few points. She lost tonight. I'm calling.
She was up by 40 points in this state, and now it's a draw.
No matter what happens tonight, even if she edges it out, I think she lost. I think, to give her credit, her team has a national infrastructure. She's still leading Sanders nationally by double digits.
If she were to end up losing this state and then losing New Hampshire, she's 0-2.
It just means that she's going to have to now fight it out probably through April. She's going to have to go state by state.
In other words, she's not going to be walking to any nomination.
She's not out of it after she loses Iowa and New Hampshire. But in terms of her walking away with a nomination and starting on the general, not happening anytime soon.
What if they get to the convention and there's still nip and tuck along the way? Could you see an argument for an outsider coming in if the party's getting restless?
Well, let me put it this way. If she slips, and other things can happen to her as well. The Democrats have, what the Republicans don't, 20% of the delegates are superdelegates. Those are sitting members of the DNC, congressmen, senators, and governors. She has all of the endorsements coming out of the Senate, most of them in the House and Senate. I want to tell you something. Do not underestimate this party's willingness to do anything to stop Sanders. And if
Did they try to stop Jimmy Carter in '76?
Well, they tried, but we were.
He had such momentum, right?
Well,
we had a more and there were no superdelegates. There were no superdelegates. We had a primary system.
But you did have party favorites who were trying to stop the Southern governor, right?
Exactly.
They were toying with Hubert Humphrey,
Humphrey was about to get in and didn't.
Ted Kennedy.
Well, remember, because Jimmy Carter said, "I'm really sorry he's not running. I wanted to beat him." The Carter could be an ass.
Yeah.
Could be having a moment.
4 years later, he said, "Oh, we're going to whip his ass."
Well, exactly. He was.
They didn't like each other.
No. He actually loved Humphrey. But
No. Well, more about Ted Kennedy.
I would think that is an understatement by
to put it
a little bit.
Okay.
Yes.
So bottom line is, you look at these two headquarters, Clinton headquarters on the left, Bernie Sanders headquarters on the right. We're waiting here for both candidates here. I'm told we're not going to do what we did 4 years ago and stay up till 2:30 or 3. So that will allow plenty of time for Pat and I to do Jello shots and do the things that we had promised in our pajama party. And I want you just before we go to a break to picture that. All right, the Jello shots, pajama party, me and Pat Cadell. I'll leave you with that thought. Frightening, isn't it? It's getting late. But more after this. Back with Cruz fundraiser. Mica Mosbacher, Jeb Bush supporter, Morgan Ortegas, and Pat Cadell. Pat, to you first. We're not going to be able to call this Democratic race, even with 95 or 6% of the state delegates in. And that alone should tell you something about, even if she squeaks out a victory, it's a squeaker.
This thing is so close. And just what we saw on characteristics, with the other two, we know she wins experience big. He wins honest and trustworthy. let me tell you one thing. A caucus of people party more the most partisan parties in your party. Let me tell you, when you get to primaries, the qualities of honest and trustworthy and the quality of the Bernie, the other one he was winning big on cares about people like me are most important. But I'll tell you, I've just been through the counties, and boy, it just depends on what's out. There is some big counties for her, a couple for her, several for Bernie Sanders, and in the small counties, she's predominating, but there's not much out. So it's literally going to be like this.
I think no matter how you slice it,
she's a loser. Look.
It is very, very close. So, Morgan, you're looking at this, and Republicans are seizing on this thing. It's a disaster for her. But obviously she wants to squeak out a win no matter how close it is. This is not a victory statement. And looking at the Bernie Sanders headquarters, they don't look like a defeated bunch there. So even if they lose and by a fraction or so, they are well poised going into New Hampshire.
I was speaking to someone about 6 months ago, very close to the Clintons, and I said, tell me what you expect to happen in the race. And they said, of course, we're going to have someone to the left that's going to challenge us, that's going to try and make it a serious race. But they never expected that it was going to be like this in Iowa, and it's certainly not in New Hampshire. I think this is much more serious than the Clinton campaign ever expected. And I think it really speaks to the fact that Hillary Clinton just has a problem sealing the deal nationally. And this is among Democrats. This is the second time in a row where she's going to go into the early states, the odds-on favorite, and she has blown the lead twice now.
All right, I think it sounds like Bernie Sanders is either under the auditorium or will. A news shocker there. They watch MSNBC, those monitors. But we are waiting to hear from Bernie Sanders. Mica, before he gets up to the podium here, it's a big night for him, isn't it?
It is a big night. Again, it's a big night for an insurgent. I think Ted Cruz would much rather take on Hillary Clinton. She has her problems, especially with the emails and her trustworthy factor. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this shakes out.
What does this mean as we're looking at this? The state delegates now is now 93%.
Three delegates.
But we were at 95%. Is it just the way the numbers are crunched?
It may be how they're crunched in terms of estimating vote versus precincts in.
Okay, but bottom line, it's going to be difficult to call, even as close as it is, even though we're looking at delegates, not raw vote, but it's, again, assigned that way. Why is it this goofy? Why do they do it like this?
Because, and by the way, this is going to end. Let me tell you, for both parties. The Republican Party in the future has been worried about too much evangelistic candidates win in Iowa, and it's not a real test of someone who wins nationally. We will see.
Okay, Blake Berman is at Sanders headquarters in the middle of all of that noise. So, Blake, if they're at the short end of what is a very, very, very almost even stick here, they're certainly not acting that way. What are you hearing there?
Well, they're starting to play what potentially could be a little bit of the program to be the warm-up for Bernie Sanders to come out. We haven't gotten any heads up yet as to when exactly he will be speaking, though we anticipate it to be soon, considering Hillary Clinton has done just that. Neil, a couple things to point out here. I can't help but think back to being in this state 4 years ago, and this playing out very similarly to what happened with Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum, as right now with 7% of the precincts still out there, and this being a 0.2% difference. You'll remember in that case, on election night, it went deep into the night, and Mitt Romney was declared the winner. Well, then fast forward what I believe was a couple weeks later, and it turned out that Rick Santorum ended up winning and did so by 34 votes. I bring that up because in this case on the Democratic side, there will not be a recount of any kind. This is a caucus in which people do not vote by name or by ballot box. They vote by standing in one side of the room, and then there is a process that plays on from there on out. So who might be the quote-unquote winner? There will be a winner, and then there will be the expectations and the perceptions from all of this, which you have been hitting on. But it is certainly similar to what we saw on the Republican side back in 2012. The circumstances, though, a whole lot different, as you had what many thought was an inevitable candidate in Hillary Clinton, who was up 41 points by the time Bernie Sanders got into the race. And now, as I look at my computer screen, it's 0.2. Back to you.
And by the way, Fox has declared, sometimes, I don't take anything away from any of us here, but we've declared what you could see, that it's too close to call. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. which is this, with the crowd there and all. The Democrats do, and let's make sure the audience understands this, they are reporting the actual number of votes in the precincts for each candidate at the end of the process, as well as the delegates. The Democratic Party is choosing apparently only to release the delegate numbers. And that is very, they're tied on both ends. But they have the capacity to at least recount their overall votes in terms of a recount. So just for the record, if they wanted to.
Well, I don't understand what you said, but I'm furious.
I don't know if I am
curious
either.
about it. But one of these.
The answer is, darn it, we should have a recount.
Well, you know, but Blake, according to what you're saying, you can't, right? It's next to impossible to do that. I don't know if that's by design, but man, oh man, it's weird.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's no recount process, and the recount, keep in mind, is controlled in many cases by the state. In whatever big, statewide or national race, it's done by either the Secretary of State or some law or state rule that mandates a recount within an X amount percent. In most cases, it's about 0.5%. The caucuses are run by the party. So it's not like there is something in Iowa law that mandates a recount, one, that would force it to happen, and then two, as your guest there just pointed out, they go by their whole statewide delegate reporting system. So it's not like there's really a way to get everybody back in the gym and stand in their corners again and do it, because that would be the only way to do it by the way the Democrats run things.
But they could recount at least, recheck every precinct result where they have totals to make sure there are no transcription errors. That is possible because, as I said, I'm looking at the county data and they are reporting the actual vote totals.
And you know, Pat, this was a concern. Remember Bernie Sanders that Microsoft would be crunching this number. There's nothing suspected toward of Microsoft, but they took over this. A lot of Microsoft executives have given money and been helpful to the Hillary Clinton campaign. So there are going to be those in the Sanders campaign are going to be saying, wait a minute.
Exactly. And we will see. But I think this is going to hurt both parties, by the way, eventually, about Iowa. The national
it was more
party.
Transparent. The Republicans are more transparent.
Well,
they get the rap for being very secretive and Byzantine in the way, but they were very open. And
you can't defend a caucus, what is essentially a semi-primary, and treat it like we don't have to have real votes.
Very good point. Morgan Ortegas is with us, a big Jeb Bush backer. The one thing that is, no matter what happens with the final, and we're not going to be able to get a final winner on this one way or the other. I'm waiting to hear from Bernie Sanders, by the way. But for Hillary Clinton, I mean, she had fought to a draw. Former First Lady, husband Bill Clinton, party rock stars, dominating figures, losing to a guy who's, we're 70-plus years old, presumably out of touch, and a socialist. Not good.
Well, and I think it was a strategic calculation on her part to give the speech so much earlier, because if she waited much longer, it may have had to have been a concession speech.
Yeah.
We're getting recalculation right now, and it's straight even.
By the way, we're jumping around, and we're playing favorites here. This is going on. Ted Cruz is still speaking right now, but we do want to focus on all this stuff happening concurrently. We're trying to be as fair about this as we possibly can, but Bernie Sanders, the man of the moment, and what he's done in the Democratic Party is probably just as significant, if not more so, than what Ted Cruz is doing in the Republican Party. Because this guy, this 70-plus-year-old socialist, is very close to leading this Democratic contest. Next week at this time, with an expected New Hampshire win, very well could be Bernard Sanders right now. All right, you're watching Bernie Sanders. He was very straightforward about it, but he did congratulate Martin O'Malley. He says the race is too close to call. Hillary Clinton did not. He said that his people should be very happy about this performance, and clearly they are. He has taken the power broker of the Democratic Party and drawn even with her. It is simply too close to call, and we're not going to be able to call it tonight. But when we look at this, Pat Goodell, for Bernie Sanders to draw this even in Iowa, a state that he trailed by 40-plus points a little more than a few months ago, going into New Hampshire where he leads by double digits, I should say, he's the one with the momentum.
Yes, he is the one with the momentum, no matter how this comes out. And remember, he's not just running against her. She has 38 senators, Democratic senators, out of their 40-some. She has many, many more House members, whatever. He means the entire establishment. There are similarities, some of what Cruz said, some of what we heard from Trump and Sanders. This is a night of the outsiders, and they are shaking this thing up. And we're going to deal now with maximum chaos.
You know, I don't think it was by accident, Blake Berman, if you're still with me there, that he did quickly choose to acknowledge and thank Martin O'Malley. Hillary Clinton missed that opportunity. That could be an important acknowledgement if he's looking to woo those. I know relatively few supporters, but in a tight race, they could make a big difference, couldn't they?
Yeah, with Martin O'Malley dropping out, and we had anecdotal evidence tonight that a lot of those O'Malley supporters ended up, during the caucus when he was deemed not viable, ended up going to the Sanders side of the room tonight. I thought it was interesting, Neil, that Sanders tried to make the pitch here just moments ago that they are in a virtual tie, because last night when we attended his event just down the road here in Des Moines, Sanders was essentially trying to prep his supporters for saying, hey, if we come up a couple percentage points short, in the end, it'll just be one, maybe two, maybe three delegates short. But tonight, he can make the case and is making the good.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, no, I
want to say one other thing. Yeah. One thing is, for the audience, is you saw Hillary Clinton, you saw Bernie Sanders. Whose crowd do you think thought they won tonight?
Well, that was a more enthusiastic one. All right, the Iowa caucuses now are in the history books. We don't have final numbers on Iowa. Suffice it to say, this kickoff to the race is not exactly as this race was envisioned, a little more than a few months ago when it was Hillary Clinton supposedly in a walk, now a stumbling walk, and Donald Trump looked to be invincible. He was humbled tonight, a rare experience for Donald Trump. Ted Cruz is alive and well and still fighting, and now all of a sudden Marco Rubio is in the mix and right now battling it out for second place. That isn't such a done deal. So the race has been reconfigured in ways that we didn't think possible. So Iowa has done what it so often does, make idiots out of pundits. Not us, mind you.
And some pollsters,
some pollsters as well.
Pollsters
we got it right.
We are always
That's
right.
the way we roll. And we're back at it again in New Hampshire.